Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Tina Jha. In a significant move to further crack down on terror, India on Thursday indefinitely suspended cross-LoC trade in Jammu and Kashmir. The decision, effective Friday onwards, came amid reports that it was being misused by elements from across the border to smuggle weapons, narcotics, as well as fake currency. The official statement released by the Ministry of Home Affairs said orders have been issued for halting the trade at Salamabad of Baramulla in the Kashmir region and Chakkan-da-Bagh of Poonch district in the Jammu region. The crackdown comes 2 months after India withdrew the Most Favoured Nation status to Pakistan in the wake of the dastardly Pulwama terror attack. Although the Ministry of Home Affairs statement asserts that the decision will be revisited after stricter regulatory mechanisms are put in place to ensure that only bonafide trade takes place, which benefits the people of Jammu and Kashmir and does not pose any security threat to the country. On the show today, let's discuss in detail why suspending cross-LoC trade had become imperative for the government and its implications on cross-border terror between India and Pakistan. Joining me on the show are former Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, Major General retired Dhruv C. Katot, Director, India Foundation, and Mr. Abhinav Prakash, Assistant Professor Economics, University of Delhi. A very warm welcome to our distinguished panelists on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador Dayal, I would like to begin the program with your comments on what do you think about the government's decision. Is it a bold step towards crackdown on terror or a regressive one as is being claimed by several political parties in Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, my view is that security is non-negotiable. And anything which impinges adversely on your security has to be dealt with very firmly. Government has very categorically stated that it had received reports that the cross-LoC trade was being misused in a variety of ways. It had really fallen prey to the machinations of certain individuals who are closely connected with terrorist organizations. Moreover, there were many militants who had crossed over into Pakistan and who were now based there and were also simultaneously running some business outfits engaged in exporting stuff to India. So clearly their intention was to use this trade route to funnel terror. There are very clear indications and there is evidence available with government which shows that cross-border, cross-LoC trade was being used to funnel weapons, narcotics and currency. As you know, this trade was a barter trade, which means that goods were supplied by one side to the other and in return different goods were supplied from the other side. But there was a lot of over-invoicing going on from the Pakistan side. For instance, if it was said that 10,000 rupees worth of goods were exported by a trader from Pakistan to India, in reality maybe only 1,000 or 2,000 rupee worth goods were exported. Okay. And the balance was in terms of over-invoicing, which the trader in India was supposed to use to fund terror outfits, give the money to terror outfits. So it was really pathetic that the route was being misutilized in this manner. And I think the government has very wisely cracked down on it and said that stiffer regulatory mechanisms will be put in place. Until then, this will not be operational at all, this route for cross-LoC trade. Moreover, you know, any such scheme, any such activity can work well provided both sides have good intentions. But the Pakistani side has shown malintentions repeatedly because it wants to encourage terrorist activities against India. And therefore, the government has very wisely put a stop to cross-LoC trade because it was being used by terrorist organizations to carry out activities against India.
Yes. Major General Katot, cross-LoC trade in the past also has survived several spells of Indo-Pak tensions. What, according to you, were the main reasons that this time that the government had to take the plunge and, decide that this is it and no, temporary suspension but an indefinite one until a permanent solution or a stricter mechanism is worked out?
Well, Tina, it started off in 2008 when they said, okay, let's have some confidence building measures. I think this was an olive branch which was extended by the government of India. at that point of time to the government of Pakistan and told them, listen, let's move ahead. Now, Pakistan, as very rightly said by Ambassador Prabhudyal before me, has always played a dirty game. I think it is in their genes to promote terrorism within India. And they will use each and every weapon which is available to them, or every tool which is available to them to actually promote this goal. So that is one of the reasons why it actually became a non-starter. Now, the trade did go on. The cross-border trade did go on for quite some time. Since 2008, it has been going on. And I think Mehbooba Mufti gave a statement that in 2018, it had touched about 5,000 crores. I think that is the statement which was given. It is difficult really to put an exact figure onto how much money has gone, because it is a barter trade. And a lot of hawala is also actually taking place. Now, when we actually analyze what are the benefits which have been achieved over the last 10 years, one, has it built confidence amongst the people? The answer is no. What has it really achieved? It has achieved nothing except spreading terror further. And now I think the government, very specifically over the last 3 years, there has been a very concerted focus by the government of India to crack down on terrorist organizations. From the army side, there was a very specific operation called Operation All Out, which has been very, very successful. And the number of terrorists who have been eliminated, when you look at the period over the last 3 years, it has been very high. And this trend has continued to the present year, despite the fact that we had a very serious setback at Pulwama, where we lost 40 plus of our very brave soldiers. That is part of the system that at some point of time we will also, well, though we don't want to, but it happens that sometimes you also suffer. Now, having said that, if this fight has to go on one front we have been very successful, that is as far as curbing or trying to put tremendous pressure on the terrorists who are actually in the valley. On the second side, we have had partial success, that is as far as curbing the money supply is concerned. We achieved a great deal of success when the demonetization took place, but after that it petered down. I think there was, the focus actually got, the emphasis which should have continued to be laid, perhaps got diluted a little bit. A third place where we have achieved great success is on the foreign policy front, by which I think most of the world capitals are very, very firmly on the side of India in this war against terrorism, which was why when the Balakot attacks took place, I think all the world capitals were with India, and even China, which is a very staunch supporter of Pakistan, even they remain muted. Pakistan didn't have one single country to actually extended open support.
Yes.
So on the foreign policy front, I think it was a tremendous success. However, we have still not been able to really curb the weapon supply and the money supply. Now, one of the conduits, it may not be the main conduit, but one of the conduits is this trade.
Yes.
And this money supply is coming in through the hawala route. Now, obviously, if it's an hawala route, it is very difficult to check, because anytime you overprice a particular item and then you pay the difference and that money goes to the terrorist organizations, I think there is a very serious level of concern. The second point which is happening here is that it is not simply, it is supposed to be a barter trade, but now third-party trade has started. That means goods from other people have now started entering. So now we are really talking of smuggling,
yes,
right? And that was not really what this was meant for. Now, who benefits from activities of smuggling? It is not the common people. It will be again those the terrorist organizations and the people who wish to destabilize India. So having said that, we find that this system is not working, so obviously it must go. Now, if you have to carry out a war against terror, I have been making the statement repeatedly, it is simply not an army effort. Or the armed forces and the security forces are but one of the tools. It is a national effort.
Of course.
So, when we talk of an approach, we must talk of a whole of India approach. And this whole of India approach encompasses the armed forces and the other supporting security forces, but it also encompasses every other organization of India to include the political aspects, the diplomatic efforts, the financial efforts, and efforts by the NIA. Now, this is one more aspect which I think we need to put on the table, because it is simply not checking hawala money or drug smuggling or weapon supplies. It is actually getting those people, convicting them in a court and putting them behind bars. I think that action is also now on by the NIA, and I think that is going to yield huge results. So when we are looking at it holistically, that we wish to win the war on terror, we wish to return stability and peace to the valley, I think it is important that aspects like cross-border trade, which have achieved nothing so far, and which have only been used for an ulterior motive to benefit a few people and to promote terror within India, that needs to stop. I'm glad this step has been taken, and I hope it is continued, not just temporarily, it should be continued till the last vestiges of terror are eliminated from this country. And there's just one more point I want to give to this, just very short point. And this means that we have to ensure that Pakistan closes each and every terror camp within its soil and hands over those perpetrators of terror to India for trial. That is the closure. Then we can open trade.
Indeed. Ambassador Dayal, so what Major General is pointing out, do you see it as a efficient enough step by the government of India to further isolate Pakistan and its Pakistan-sponsored terrorism on Indian soil? Is it going to curtail funding of terror activities, in particular the homegrown terrorism in Kashmir?
Well, whatever steps government considers necessary to curb terror or terrorist activities must be taken. Because as I said in my very opening sentence, our security is not negotiable. And unless, as the General pointed out, the last vestiges of terrorism are wiped out from within Kashmir and from across the border, our fight against terrorist activities directed against us cannot end. So the steps will have to be continually reassessed. New steps may have to be thought. And I think the government is fully capable of deciding what the security of the country requires and what it necessitates. Now, I would only like to say that on matters relating to security, there should be no politicization. For the simple reason that the larger interests of the country should override narrow political interests. Unfortunately, I've seen that through the media, that there has been a certain amount of politicization relating to the government's decision to stop cross-LoC trade, although it has been made amply clear that this route for trade was being misused in a variety of ways. Only people who support terrorist activities against our country will come out against the move to stop cross-LoC trade, because of the simple reason that they may possibly have an interest in keeping alive the fires of terrorism which are waging particularly in Kashmir.
Yes.
The fact of the matter also is that unless harsh and strong steps are taken by government to clamp down on terror outfits, they will find new ways to operate. I remember that cross-LoC trade had been started in 2008 and the then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh ji had said that borders should become irrelevant. But unless terrorism ends, borders cannot fade away. And cross-LoC trade based on the barter system envisioned good intentions by both sides, because the whole scheme was designed to benefit people in Kashmir living on either side of the line of control. But if from the Pakistani side there is mischief and misuse, then surely this arrangement cannot work. And as the General also pointed out, it was being misused in a variety of ways. For instance, to smuggle third country products into India, although the original design was only to encourage the exchange of products across the line of control, which were grown on the other side and which met the needs of the common man, not to smuggle high-end consumer items manufactured in third countries. So we have found repeatedly that the intentions on the Pakistani side are not above board. And I strongly support the step taken by government to close LoC trade simply because it is hurting our interests.
Yes.
And it is only helping those elements which carry out terrorist activities against India. You know, funneling weapons, narcotics, illegal currency into our country has a hugely mischievous dimension. Perhaps the common man is not aware of the potential mischief which these activities have. But surely strategic thinkers and people who are in government are aware of the manner in which these hurt our interests. So,
coming to the trade aspect of it, Mr. Prakash, how do you think the government's decision is going to impact cross-LoC trade between both India and Pakistan? Is it a heavy blow in particular to small trade?
Well, when we're talking about this cross-LoC trade, we have to remember that it never had much economic logic. It was basically the part of the confidence building measure launched by the previous government. And the people benefit from the trade when you have the production structures in both the regions basically being mobilized and utilized for generating the trade. In this case, it was just a barter trade in which few people were trading, and out of the 600 or so traders registered to trade, only 300 were participating in that. So the direct number of people involved in the trade is not more than 1500, if you include the truck drivers, the traders and the laborers. So it was never a very large size trade that it is going to impact the well-being of the people. It was basically, as they were pointing out, used by the vested interest, entrenched interest groups in the Kashmir Valley, and also the shady groups like terror organizations, smugglers and all, to basically transfer the funds and we were basically paying to bomb ourselves using this trade. The second point is that we just don't know the goods coming from Pakistani side, were they coming from the Pakistani Kashmir, the Pakistan occupied Kashmir, or were they coming from the other parts of Pakistan, or maybe from China nowadays, because Chinese goods have flooded the Pakistan.
Yes.
So it basically opened up a different route of dumping in India. Maybe it's possibly, we don't know exactly. The third point I will say is that we do not know what is the size of this trade. Now one figure puts that since 2008 and 2018, the India has exported around goods around 950 crore, and we have imported around 800 worths of good. The cross-LoC trade union says that the quantum of the trade is 6,700 crore or something. So because it's a barter trade, we do not know what is the exact amount figure of the trade in the real sense. But I think, it's not just about the LoC trade which is problematic. We have to see this Indo-Pak trade in its entirety. We have to basically look at the trade route, the illegal trade routes between India and Pakistan, which runs to Dubai and Singapore. More than LoC trade, I will say they are the bigger source of terror funding in India, because all the Hawala route and all those things operate not from LoC but from the, I will say, the Gulf countries.
Okay.
So I think this is a very strong step, much needed step, but this is not the end of it. We have to actually build upon it. So the ministry is saying they're looking into the mechanisms to basically find out ways to impose strict regulations and more transparent regulation of the trade. But I don't think that is possible, as they had also pointed out, when the other side does not have a good intention, how are you going to trade with them using your good intentions? So I think we have to suspend the trade, and we have to also clamp down upon the Indo-Pakistan trade in general, and also the illegal trade routes running between the Dubai and Singapore and India. See, the problem with India has been, we have never been able to use our economic might against the Pakistan.
Yes.
It's not just about the trade. I mean, look at the airspace. India is one of the largest aviation market in the world. If India were to simply say that any airline which is doing business with Pakistan will not be allowed to enter into India, imagine the repercussions around the world. This is how you do it. But India has been hesitant in taking strong steps against Pakistan. I think this withdrawal of the MFN and now this banning of the cross-border trade has signaled that the government has intention to follow it up, and I hope so that the next government actually does that.
Perhaps because the aim of our government is not to affect the people at large, and because it's a government-to-government thing. Major General Katoch, coming back to the confidence building measures that we were talking about, the aim with which it was started, cross-LoC trade back in 2008. We've seen several opposition parties are calling it a regressive step. They're saying that the government has kind of sacrificed the legacy of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, because this was seen as a people-to-people contact between people of both Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and our Kashmir. What do you think? Does it hurt the confidence of people? And what can the government do, to convince the population living there that, it's not something that's targeted against you, but it's a security that we are, ensuring that security is paramount, and this is something that we cannot negotiate with? How difficult is it going to be for the government?
As Professor Prakash just said, and very rightly he put it down, how many people are really involved in this trade? When you look at the complete population of Jammu and Kashmir, right? As we said, trade is taking place at two places.
But the larger message that it sends out to all Kashmiris.
I'll talk about the psychological message, but first let's get the facts right.
Yes.
How many people are involved, right? And then you will find it is a minuscule amount, right? So it is this handful of people whom we are thinking of as building confidence-building measures. Now, it's not going to work because this percentage may be less than 0.005%. That means we are talking about 99.99% of the people not being impacted by this cross-border trade, right? That is one.
Yes.
But that 99.99% people is being impacted by terrorism. So when we are looking at confidence-building measures, I think we have to look at the complete population and not just at a particular segment who is being benefited by this trade and who are now using this particular trade to feather their own nest. One. Number two, when we are looking at the opposition, I don't want to make it political, but let's face one thing. They are talking about the legacy of the late Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. Now, Atal Bihari Vajpayee was one of the outstanding prime ministers of this country. There's no denying that fact. But please take your mind back to the time when Atal Bihari ji was the prime minister and what the opposition was saying about him. They are only talking about his greatness now.
Yes.
They never talked about his greatness then. When he was the Prime Minister of India, they carried out the same hate campaign against him as they are doing against the present government. So obviously 10 years from now, they will also say that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been a great visionary leader, presuming there's somebody else who was the leader at that time. So I don't take that statement at all. I think when we are looking at the people of Jammu and Kashmir, let us say that if we have to build confidence amongst the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the only confidence building measure which I feel is worthwhile is to ensure that the gun culture goes. Yes. Please take it from me. Once the gun culture goes, everything else will settle down. But till that gun culture goes, till that gun culture is prevalent, we will continue to have these problems. So not just cross-border trade. I think the time has come to convey a very harsh message to Pakistan. You are a state sponsor of terrorism. We will not have anything to deal with you. Now we have the MFN status has gone. Incidentally, that is a one-sided. We had given that status. They had not given it to us. But as it is, the trade was low, so it didn't really matter. Now this cross-border trade has gone. I think the time has come, as Professor Prakash very rightly said, well, we can seize all trade. We don't need anything from Pakistan. We should actually isolate them, put economic pressure on them to make it absolutely unbearable. Get them to heal, get them to behave, get them to change their thought processes. And unless we do that, it's not going to work. So that amount of pressure to make these people behave, to close every single terrorist training camp, and to make them responsible and send those people who were involved in terror back to India for trial. Now, that is the basic minimum which we expect.
Indeed.
And that will be confidence-building measures. This is not called confidence-building measures, that we send a few truckloads of mangoes or apples and they send a few cashew nuts. That is not confidence-building. That is simply eyewash. So let us get real now. We have to get to the origins of the terror state. And I think what the government is doing is right. They may have to go much further down the road to actually put this message very clear to Pakistan. Not an over and above economics, no social contact. Don't play cricket with these fellows. Don't have any of their film stars or any of their writers or any of those people, the social activists. We don't want them, please. You are a terrorist state. You please stay where you are. If that is what you want, stay there. We don't want you. And that message has to go loud and clear, and it has to be continuous for a period of 5 to 10 years to have an impact.
Ambassador Dayal, one last quick closing comment from you. As Major General said, that we have to ensure that Pakistan is isolated. In the last 2 months, we have taken several steps which is towards isolating Pakistan. But the Ministry of Home Affairs also talks about a strict stricter regulatory mechanism which should be put in place until we restart the cross-LoC trade? What, according to you, can be some steps that the government will take so that this cross-LoC trade route is not misused once again?
Well, I think the steps which the government plans to take in this regard are under study. They are being examined, so I really cannot preempt what the government should do or wants to do. But there is no doubt that much stricter monitoring of cross-LoC trade will become necessary if ever it has to be resumed. We should not be in any hurry to resume it purely because certain voices within the country, and particularly from within the state of Jammu and Kashmir, are making a hue and cry about it. We should only resume it when we are 100% convinced that trade across LoC will not be used to fund terror activities against us. Because till now, trade has been more of trickery. It has been misused and it has caused trouble for us. So we should make sure that it should remain just trade. It should not change into trickery and terror, which has been at our cost. Because really speaking, unless the intentions of the other side become cleaner, we cannot really trust them in this regard. And they are using this route to hurt us. And as was pointed out by the other panelists, the trade is of a very small volume.
Yes, it's not going to impact us.
At the same time, that little route is being misused and misutilized in whatever manner possible to cause injury to us. So why should we allow this to happen?
Indeed.
As regards the steps which government will take, surely there may be a number of steps. They must be under a study just now, they must be examined. But as I said, we should not be in a hurry to somehow come under pressure and reopen. We should take our time, and when we reopen, it should be in terms of a watertight arrangement, that this arrangement will not be misutilized against us.
Indeed, Ambassador, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of The Big Picture and putting things into perspective for us. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. We'll be back same time tomorrow with a focus on some other subject. Thank you very much for your time.